Hey guys, stay tuned to the end of the episode where I'm going to read one of the iTunes reviews for Fascination Street Podcast. If you've left one, it might be yours, and if you haven't, do it, and maybe it will be in the future. I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Hey guys, if you like what I'm doing, click the Amazon banner at the top of the homepage on FascinationStreetPod.com and do all of your shopping through Amazon. Once you click on it and it takes you to Amazon, you can bookmark it or add it to your favorites and you won't have to go to my site each time. It helps me keep the show going, and again, thanks for listening. Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is with Brad Fanshaw. Brad is one of the hosts of Man Seeks Adventure podcast and also the Shift and Steer podcast. Having Brad on this episode does give me the complete set of the Shift and Steer guys, so if you're a fan of them, which you should be, go back and check out my episodes with Aaron Hagar and mattd'andria. In this episode, we talk about how Brad got started in all kinds of different industries. He has done and been a part of so many of the most amazing and iconic brands and things. You're going to shit when you find out all the stuff he's done. In this episode, we also talk about what he does in the automotive industry, what he does in the watch industry, and we also talk about how he got hooked up with the legendary Boyd Coddington and the rock icon Madman Michael Anthony, and how he partnered with both of those guys in different ventures that have been through the roof successful. And lastly, on one of Brad's podcasts, Man Seeks Adventure, they have a drink of the day on every episode. And the very last thing we do in this episode is I give him a drink recipe that he's never tried before. So look forward to hearing them try it on Man Seeks Adventure. And this is my interview with Brad Fanshaw. Talk to me. Welcome to Fascination Street Podcast, Brad Fanshaw. How are you doing today, Brad?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I cannot complain. This means I got the whole set.
A matching set of Shift and Steer guys.
Yep, I already got mattd'andria, I got Aaron Hagar, and now I got the incomparable Brad Fanshaw, man. I'm so excited.
I saved the best for last. You did it right.
That's what Matt said. He said, just wait and get Brad last because he's the best. So, Brad, tell me about where you were born and raised. Where'd you grow up, man?
Oh, wow. Born and raised two different places. Scottsdale, Arizona, and Omaha, Nebraska. And the reason I say that is because my dad was an executive for Sony when they first came to America, and before that, Olivetti. So he would go around and open new territories, hire all the people, and then we'd move back to Scottsdale. So I bounced around. I've lived in Norman, Oklahoma, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Denver, Colorado, San Diego. But we always went back to Scottsdale, and that was always kind of my home base until I was in like junior high, and we left San Diego and moved to Omaha. And at that time, I kind of stayed there all through junior high, high school, and pretty much my first 2 years of college. So it was kind of like a lot of experience there. That's where I got into cars. That's where I got into trouble and all kinds of stuff. So
trouble. You mentioned cars, and I guess that's kind of where it started, your rise to where you are now. When you say you got into cars, what exactly does that mean at the beginning?
Well, my first interest in cars came earlier because you're always into something fast. You start with Hot Wheels, but then you find out there's a bike that can give you transportation and give you freedom. And so I got into bicycles and then into BMX and started racing BMX because that was competitive and it was fun. And then when I turned 16, of course, I got my driver's license, and that gave me an excuse to get a car. And my dad came home one day and he said, hey, a friend of mine over in Iowa has a car for sale. And I'm not even 16. I had just gotten my learner's permit, and I'd been saving up. And he said, I don't know if you'd be interested in it or not, but we could drive over and look at it. Well, what is it? And And he goes, and, when you're 15 and 3/4 and, looking at that first set of wheels, anything sounds good. But all he had to say was, well, it's a 67 Chevelle SS. As soon as I heard Chevelle SS, I was like, so yeah, let's go look at it. And we went over to Iowa, checked it out, and it was mine. And I paid $675 for it. I was the second owner, and it was a SS 396 Chevelle.
Wow, $600?
Back then, that's what they were going for. That was the going price.
What do you think that car's worth right now?
Well, I hope it's worth a lot. I still own it.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, I couldn't let that one go. I'm pretty much of a pack rat, but few of them have had to go over the years, but that one I've held on to, partially because it was my first car and partially because I started a frame-off restoration of it that I haven't finished yet. So it's still sitting in a building over in Arizona waiting for me to come get it and finish it up.
Gotcha. So you said that that car is in a warehouse in Arizona?
Yeah, it's in a warehouse in Arizona waiting for me to come retrieve it. It's on a body dolly. I started the restoration, and then it sits over there with some of my other cars, and I keep threatening to go get it. And I've actually got it on the trailer once, and then I had to take it back because I ran out of some room. But it'll get back here pretty soon, and then I'll finish it up and get it back on the road.
That is fantastic. I can't believe you still have your first car. That is so cool.
It's pretty crazy because, I think of, all the stuff I did in that car from street racing to high school and all the great memories, and I've still got it.
Yeah, and some things we just won't talk about because your wife might hear this.
Exactly.
So that's where the love affair started, huh? I mean, that's a hell of a way to start a love affair with cars. That is a beautiful machine.
Oh, man. I couldn't have got luckier because that car was just, I probably would have taken a Duster or a Dart or anything, a Chevette at the time. But when he said that, and I had saved up almost enough money to buy it, and I went, okay, yeah, let's do it. And it kind of started that. I won't say it started a love affair because I loved cars way before that, but it was the one that gave me the real taste. And Omaha was a real hotbed. When you talk about car enthusiasts, that was full of some of what today would be considered the rarest muscle cars and things like that were just on the street as regular cars, and that was pretty cool.
That's amazing. So then from there, I don't know how much you're allowed to say, and feel free to say you can't say anything at all, but
yeah.
You hooked up with Boyd Coddington, right?
Well, there was a little bit of a, between there. I mean, I had gone back to Arizona, moved back to Arizona, and finished up college down there. And then I went to work for the American Bicycle Association, which anybody who raced BMX knows the ABA. And I originally started out because I thought I wanted to be a magazine editor. I had studied advertising and marketing, and I was a photographer, so I had gone to work there to be the editor of their magazine. And being that I was a professional BMX racer, I knew all about that sport. And when I got there, I loved it. But it wasn't too long after I was there that I started getting involved in the business side, helping sell the advertising, the sponsorships, running the company, and learning every aspect of it, down to the point of where I even built some of the tracks. I learned how to run heavy equipment and front loaders and stuff like that. Yeah, so I could build all the supercross tracks, and I became the vice president of the company. That was kind of my very first gig. That was my first job, was helping run the ABA and doing everything. And like I said, even building the tracks. And I always kid around, if everything falls apart, I can be a heavy equipment operator because I know how to do that. I've built many a track in stadiums and like that.
That is so kick-ass. That is an amazing job, like straight out of college.
Yeah, it was awesome. Well, it was. I actually had a quarter of college to go, and I had to make that decision. They made me the offer to come in and be the editor of their magazine. And I said, okay, so I go another quarter and I do what I want to do, but I start in the mailroom, or I leave now and I go do that. And I did it. And it was the best decision I ever made because I went in with the position I wanted, and then it allowed me to grow within the company and then one of our major sponsors was Vision Streetwear. You know, if you were ever into skateboards, snowboards, or anything like that in the 80s, Vision was like the king. We were huge. But the founder of the company, I had talked him into sponsoring some of the BMX events, and he loved the way I handled things. And one day we saw each other at a trade show, and then I got a follow-up call, and he said, "Hey, how would you like to move to California and help me out with this thing?" And so I came over there and became part of the company. And
part of Vision Streetwear?
Yeah, we partnered up on it, and he just was kicking ass and taking names. I mean, he had gone from nothing to 10 million in 5 years. Then I came over, and we went from 10 million to 120 million in the next 5 years.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and in the process, we owned our own production company. We had our own apparel company. We owned some snowboards, some skateboards, Vision, and we did everything. That was one of the coolest places because we permeated so many parts of culture there. You look at films, we did product placement in all kinds of films. I mean, everything from Earth Girls Were Easy to The Burbs with Tom Hanks, where Corey Feldman's wearing our stuff, carrying our skateboard. And then when you get into the music industry, we were part of the music industry. I mean, every single crew guy wore our Vision hip packs, and every band who was big in the 80s, from the Rolling Stones, Guns N' Roses, Tom Petty, Poison, they all wore our stuff on stage in photo shoots and would come by our offices in Orange County. I mean, Ricky Rocket from Poison used to come by like every Wednesday and sit on the floor of my office and talk about things that were going on with the band, and he'd be sitting there eating his Carl's Jr. hamburger, and like I remember Steven Tyler and the guys from Aerosmith came by, and like Liv Tyler was just a little bitty kid, and let them run through the warehouse and choose whatever they wanted, and we'd take skateboards up to Tom Petty's kids. And if you ever look at that video, Free Falling, where the guys are skateboarding on the half pipe, that's my half pipe and my skaters, and it was in the backyard of a guy's house off of Mulholland, and we pulled my mobile ramp into the backyard, and they filmed it right there. And, you know, Tom was there, and Ted Templeton, the director, and it was cool. I mean, it was magical, man. I mean, we got to do stuff that you only dream about doing, because it was that plus all the skateboarding and the snowboarding and the BMX and everything like that.
All right, well, this is going to sound a little self-serving, but I know about a whole lot of stuff that you've done in your past, but I don't know any of that. How come you don't ever talk about that stuff?
It's like, what are you going to do? Go around and talk about yourself all the time? I mean,
yes,
I've been really, really fortunate, man. I mean, I've kind of lived that, where I've dropped into places and had success and moved on to we're certain people. I always say there's people that have had the opportunity to be like super successful in one industry. And I've been so fortunate to, go from action sports to the automotive industry to the watch industry, the luxury watch industry, and all that kind of stuff, and had success and had just right timing, right place, and a lot of hard work,
That is amazing. So how old were you however it happened that you left Vision Streetwear? When I left Vision, I was still in my 20s. The way that happened, I'm trying to remember because everything was going. I might have been 30, 31, right around there when I left Vision. But I was always a car guy, and I was making my living in the action sports industry and the clothing industry, and we were doing great stuff. And one day I got a call, and it was my secretary said, "Hey, there's a guy named Boyd on the phone." And I said, "Boyd," and she goes, "Boyd Coddington?" And I go, "Oh, man, yeah, let me talk to him." And I got all excited, man. I was like, "Hell, Boyd Coddington's calling me." And it was because the founder of Vision, he wanted a Woody. And I said, "Well, there's only one guy we're going to call for that, And so I put in a call to the Hot Rods by Boyd. I didn't expect Boyd would call me back. And Boyd called me back, and he invited me up. We just hit it off because, I was a car guy, and he loved
my story because Boyd was one of those guys who always wanted to know what you were about. And when it related to business, Boyd wanted to know, how'd you get there? How'd you do this? How'd you achieve this? Because then he would put it in his memory bank and remember how to use it later on. And, he was inquisitive, just like I always say I'm an information junkie. I love to learn. So we hit it off because of that, and we started talking, and we'd keep in touch. I'd come up to the shop once in a while. He'd ask me little tidbits of business advice or something. And then one day we decided to sell Vision because it had grown. It's a long story. It's a very interesting story, how it all went, but the decision was made and pared it down. And so I was going, okay, what's the next chapter? And I went up to Boyd's and I was talking to him, and we quite literally put a deal together. We shook hands. We were leaning on the dumpster. I can remember it like it was yesterday. We were leaning on the dumpster between the two hot rod shops, what he called the hot rod shop and the muscle car shop back then. And he goes, I don't know how this happened or why it happened, but let's partner up. And so we shook hands. I put some stuff together, and about a month later, I was there, and the rest was history. We, when I joined the company, Boyd was already successful. Cadzilla had just gone on the transporter, and he had just started manufacturing wheels. And when I say in mass, he had one CNC machine. So, they were sets at a time. But it was the small hot rod shop and the small restoration shop for muscle cars. And I saw that this guy had the tiger by the tail because the wheels I knew could go huge. The cars were the marketing tool. And I loved cars. I loved building cars. So it was a natural. And him and I hit it off. So I spent 6 months just studying the company. How could we grow? How could we leverage? How could we market? Then at the same time, started doing some things like reaching out to my friends at Hot Rod Magazine that were big supporters of Boyd's, and put together the very first of what would be a series of videos called Wild Wheels. Talk about total guerrilla style. I knew somebody who ran the Johnny Rockets on Melrose, and so we just showed up with a semi full of hot rods and a bunch of cool cars, some Harleys, and showed up at 4 a.m. on a Sunday and started shooting. And we had permission to shoot there, but we had cars, we had our semi parked in the street, because at the time he had what we called Little Red. It was the first semi. And the cops rolled up and they were like, do you guys got permits to do this? And I just played dumb. Do you have to have permits? I just told the guys, keep shooting while I'm talking to them. And it worked. It worked. And that was kind of how we had to do it in the early days. We didn't have the big budgets and things like that. But I knew that we had something that could grow and promote Boyd and promote all of our guys, the guys that never get talked about, that were these craftsmen from Sweden that we brought over and things like that. And we grew that company from when I came in at about a $500,000 a year company. 5 years later, I took it public on NASDAQ, and we were doing about $35 million. So it was a lot of fun.
I have to imagine that taking the company public is a very unique experience.
To say the least.
Without going into too much specific detail, obviously, can you talk a little bit about what kind of a pain in the ass, or what kind of an experience that was to take a company public?
Well, let me say the very first thing is taking any company public, it is just brutal. And I'm speaking of when I did this back in 94 and 95. Things changed dramatically even 5 years after that, or even 4 years after that, with the .com boom and everything like that, when they threw all the rules out the window, But when we did it, it was very regimented, very regulated. Not that it's not now, but there were a lot of things. And we even broke ground there, because I'll tell you about that. But when you try and sell a company that builds hot rods, makes automotive car care products, and builds wheels, and you take that to investment bankers in Boston, New York, Seattle, they look at you because they are not of the car culture. Okay, these are guys that live in Manhattan, and if they have a car, they ride in the back. That was the first hurdle, was getting them to understand that this is what people do. That yes, they spend this much money for these cars, they spend this much money for these products because that's how they want to use their disposable income. And once I got over that hurdle, then they realized, they looked at the profits and everything like that. But you asked, what's the process? The process is, first of all, structuring the company. And I come in, and it's basically a mom and pop hot rod shop that builds wheels and builds hot rods. And I had to take it in 5 years to being a fully functioning corporation that could turn lots of capital and was scalable. That was part of it. Then on the actual side, it's finding the brokerage that will support you and understand what you're trying to achieve, and then giving you the right multiples so that it makes sense financially. But then what a lot of people don't understand is they think that you say, okay, we're going to go public, and this company just does it, and you go to NASDAQ. No, it costs hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, because while Chip and Jesse and Boyd were running around going on Americruise and going to shows and smiling and having fun, I was sitting back at the office. Sure, I wanted to do that. I wanted to be out there, and I did it as much as I could, but I had to be in all-day meetings with attorneys and brokerage firms. They were called all-hands meetings, where I would walk in, and there would be 12 attorneys and accountants from a big six firm on my side of the table, and there'd be 12 of them on the other side of the table from the brokerage company. And when I walked in, I knew I was paying the clock on all 24 of those people, and that I had to keep things moving and keep it going because I had to pay for all those people. So what you do is you bring in people on the front side, which is called bridge capital, and the bridge capital pays for that, and then they get some advantages when the company goes public. They get preferred stock and things like that. So that's all of that. And people think of it, oh, it's just a hot rod company. It's just a this, it's just that. But it's like any other company, and that's what I was doing behind the scenes, as well as marketing the company and building the story and the branding and the products. And that's what I did as the president and COO while Boyd was the CEO. It's kind of funny. I had somebody say recently, I put up a photo that referenced something back in the day, and I said, when we went public, it was, hardest thing, but great. And I forget exactly what I said, but the comment was, and you know how you get stuff online, but yeah, well, I owned stock when it went public too, so what makes you, and I'm like going, yeah, but what you forget is I was the second largest shareholder of the company before it went public. I was putting everything on the line, and it was like any other corporation or company. Boyd and I, there were many times that we went without, or we actually wrote checks to make payroll on Friday. And that's what made it grow and what made it become the company that everybody remembers now. It was tough, but it was, man, what a life experience. And Boyd and I got along very well. His wife said to me once, she goes, Brad, you are the only person, this was Diane, his first wife. She goes, you're the only person that he listens to. And I go, what? And she goes, I mean, he listens to other people, but he'll come home and say, Brad said this or Brad said that. I said, well, we just had a really unique relationship. I spent more time with him than I did my wife because we were always working. We were always doing stuff. There was all the tough stuff, but there was also all the creative. Boyd and I were both conceptual designers. We knew what we wanted those cars to look like. We knew what we wanted the product to look like, but neither of us can draw stick figures. And that's why we hired Chip, because we needed someone that could take what we said verbally and make it live on paper so that we had a roadmap for building the cars.
That is amazing. So when you decided that you, I guess, sold your piece of that company, you, I guess, had a non-compete?
Absolutely. Yeah. When I sold my ownership in the company, my non-compete was, talk about all-encompassing. It was that I wouldn't build hot rods. I wouldn't design hot rods. I wouldn't build wheels. I wouldn't design wheels. It was even down to go-kart wheels, which I always chuckled at because I said, go-kart wheels? And one of the attorneys said, well, you had mentioned to Boyd once that you had a friend who built go-karts, and he didn't want you to start doing that. And I'm like, oh, geez. But that's what happens in a corporation. When you are one of the owners of the company, sit on the board of directors, they, rightly so. They don't want you to take all your profits and then go out and build their biggest competitors. And that's what happens. So I moved on and went to one of my other loves, which was mechanical wristwatches.
Now, let's talk about that. I believe your company is called Bonneville Watches. Is that right?
Yeah, Bonneville Swiss Watches.
Bonneville Swiss Watches. So first, I want you to tell, because a lot of people make some mistakes when they're going to buy a watch. You know, they buy it based on this
Sure.
thing or that thing or whatever. So if you could explain how a proper gentleman should go about purchasing a watch.
Well, I'll tell you the number one mistake people make in purchasing a watch, and this is any watch, they buy by brand first. That is almost exclusive to the United States, because you get to Europe, you get to Asia or South America, and their purchasing decision is entirely different. It is based first on the aesthetics. Then they look at the manufacturing quality and the movement. Then they look at brand as a very last benefit and price. Here, people are driven by marketing and by brand image. Then they, if they're knowledgeable, they'll look at the price and the quality and things like that. But they're really driven by different factors. So it's really an education. You need to look at the quality. And what a lot of people don't realize is there are grades of even Swiss watches, because our watches are certified Swiss made. What that means is that they are entirely manufactured, assembled, and 95% of all of the products in the watch are sourced from Switzerland. Where if you see one that has the T's on either side and it says Swiss, all that means is that it was assembled in Switzerland. And there's another grading where it's basically that 10% of the products came from Switzerland, but it might have been assembled in China. But people don't educate themselves and find out about that in the U.S. for the most part. And that's what we try to do is let people know, because I always give people the analogy of, if you go in and you buy a new Mercedes and you're just a guy walking in, you just know, oh, that body style, I like the aesthetics. You buy it, you work your deal, and you drive away. The enthusiast will walk in. They know what body style they want, but they also know they want the AMG package, and they want this drivetrain because that's the high performance. That's exactly what watches are like, because like our watch is a mechanical movement. We're the AMG because we have a fully hand-assembled mechanical chronograph that is inside of a stainless steel machined case. And I think the reason I was successful with it was because of my days at Boyd's, because when I went over to Switzerland, my wife had actually done a bunch of heavy lifting for me as far as sourcing, and she's really good at that, and she found some people that I needed to meet, and everyone told me they're not going to do your stuff. They only do the best of the best, and they don't do anything for people from America. Well, I did get a meeting with them. I went over, and we hit it off immediately, because they said to me, everyone who's ever come over here from America, they've come in and they brought a picture of a watch and said, okay, so we want to do a watch that looks like this, but with our name on it, and change this and this. And they didn't respect that. What they respected was I brought them probably 35 art boards of designs that I had in mind, and they were all original designs. And then when I walked through their factory and we went and sat back down, their machines down to the brand were exactly what we used at the wheel factory at Boyd's. Only ours were the size of a car. Theirs are the size of washing machine, right? But it all translated. And I would say, now to make this bracelet, you want to use this bit, you back drag it this way to get this. So they were actually learning and gleaning information from me on machining. So we hit it off right away. I was able, on my very first watch that we designed and built, got 3 international patents on it, which I'm pretty proud of, because when you think watches have been around for how many hundreds of years, and we were able to get utility patents, not just design patents.
Is one of those utility patents a butterfly deployment clasp?
No, that's actually quite common.
Really?
Yeah, that is actually quite common in the luxury watch industry, especially with the leather straps, because like we use real crocodile, we use real ostrich, the hides, and the better the hides, the more fragile they are. So you don't want to constantly be bending them through a buckle, and they're much more comfortable with the deployment clasp. But what our utility patent on is the case design. Every single watch ever built up to the point of the Bonneville 1248, the case had the lugs where the strap attaches to. It was all one integral part. I redesigned it to where the lugs were part of the crown. And the reason I did that was the movement's housed in a pod. So instead of retooling every single time for every different design, if we wanted to put a rotating crown on it, or we wanted a different kind of bridge or something like that, we could just tool up just the crown and the lugs, not the entire case, and it was a big cost savings. So we were able to get a utility patent on that.
Kick ass.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors. Let's get back into it.
Now, when you come out with a new watch, like you said, I think you said 1248, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Do you only make a limited number? Do you make, let's just say you make 150 of that one and then you move on to the next model, or how does that work?
Yes, every watch that we do in our line are limited worldwide. The 1248 was limited to 500 pieces worldwide, and then we would do like subcategories. Like we did a hybrid 1248 where that was very limited, 25 pieces. It had a carbon fiber dial, a natural rubber strap, and the case was finished specially. So there are some, and then we do other things. Like some of the accolades for the brand is we were named one of the top 10 watches in the world by Rob Report once, and we were also the official watch of the Saudi royal family.
Now, I was going to ask you how you managed to swing that.
Well, I'll tell you, I made numerous trips to Saudi. And, no, I'm kidding. That was one of those things where the World Watch and Jewelry Show is in Basel, Switzerland each year. We have a beautiful stand there, and we would have everyone from the watch industry come by. In fact, the people from Rolex came by one year to look at how we colored our women's watch line, our straps. Then magically the next season, they had the exact same coloration. And in fact, we even were able to do some exact colors that are named at the factories where other watch companies have to buy Bonneville orange when they buy that color leather.
Oh, like Ferrari red or something, right?
Exactly, like Ferrari red. Or like Boyd red. We've got Bonneville orange. And I'm sorry about the beeping. I'll brag a little bit. That's Billy F. Gibbons calling me on the other line. So
wait a minute. Is he the one who lives in San Antonio?
He's got a place in San Antonio and up in Hollywood. Yeah.
Oh man, I've been trying to connect with that dude forever. Do you need to take that?
No, I'll call him back when we're done.
Sweet.
So the way that happened was we were there, and all of a sudden, one afternoon, these enormous men in black suits, they came walking up, about three of them, and another guy came walking up, and he goes, sir, I can't remember the exact name, but the prince would like to come view your line. And, you've got appointments. These are appointments that you've booked and like that. And I go, oh, when would you like to do it? Right now? And we're like, oh my gosh. And well, my customer was really gracious, and he goes, no, that sounds like a big deal. You go ahead and do that, and I'll come back. And they escorted everyone out of the booth. Security came in, and then they sat down and viewed the line, and they said, thank you very much. We didn't hear from anyone. And then we got a call and started sending out watches. And at a time, they were ordering, and these watches had the royal crest, and they had a person who actually put the seal on the boxes and everything. And I finally asked, I said, so do they own a jewelry store? And they go, oh no, they have dinner parties for people in the oil industry, and this is the party favor. This is what they get when they sit down at their table. And it literally made our market in the Middle East, because people would come, they would be invited to these very high level dinners. They would sit down, they would leave with their Bonneville 1248, and then they would go home and they would show it to people, and then people would call and go, I want one of those. And we had jewelers from all over the Middle East calling wanting to have the watch that was being given out by the Saudi family at dinners, so that was fantastic for us.
Wow. I don't even know what to say, man. That is amazing. That is a wonderful story.
That's the kind of stuff you can't make happen. It just happens organically.
Now, I think it was before you started Bonneville, didn't you design watches before that? Like, didn't you design like the first versions of Tommy Bahama's watches?
Yeah. You did some good research on that. They wanted to come out with a watch line for their stores, and I made several trips to China and worked with their manufacturing and everything and developed the entire line. And it was their first initial line that was introduced. And, those always deviate from there, but it gave them the inspiration. And, we had I think it was 7 models, 2 women's and I think 5 men's. And the one that I liked the most was I did one that the dial looked like an oil drum, like the drums that they use in the Caribbean. They play, the steel drums.
Yeah.
And so, and I made it look dimpled and like that, like a steel drum. And it was my favorite. It was really cool. That was a fun project.
Very cool. How did they find you?
You know what? That's a good question. I don't remember how they found me. I think it was through people that had met me at the trade shows and things like that. And we got to do some other fun projects. We did, a lot of people don't know that we did America's Cup watches one year. We did all of the Shelby Owners Group watches for anyone who owned an authentic Shelby or a AC Cobra. And those were through Carol Shelby's company. And we've done some real interesting projects over the years.
And when you say we, you mean Bonneville?
I mean my company, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That is so crazy. So what is not a Bonneville, what's your favorite watch that you own?
That I own, it's probably a vintage Lord Elgin Jump Hour, which is a really cool watch. They made it in several variations. One looks like a dimpled golf ball. The one that I have, they call it the ingot watch, looked like a gold ingot, and there's a window at the bottom. There's no hands, there's anything. It's just a window. It was made in the 50s, and they call it a jump hour because it's rotating discs. So you look down, and it'll say, 2:30. It was a really cool watch, and it was like Elvis's favorite watch. He wore one all the time.
Oh, sweet. Have you ever heard of a watch, I'm sure you have, a watch company or a watch brand called Mistura?
I don't know a lot about them, but I have heard of them, yes.
Well, that's my favorite watch that I own. I was the best man at my friend's wedding a couple years ago, and that was the wedding gift, was a Mistura, and it was autographed by the artist or whatever. And
cool.
It's a really nice piece. I love it.
That's the whole thing. It's just like a car or anything else. It's personal to you, and it's your style, and it's what you like, and that's what you should go for. Is not what everybody else wants. It's what you want.
Yeah, and that's the watch that really just sits on a shelf until I'm all dressed up and going somewhere. I'm not changing the oil in my car with that watch. Right.
As Billy would have said, when you're a sharp-dressed man, that's the watch to have on.
There you go. Exactly. I even have a buddy. So, I guess it was last year, I had a watch. It was a wooden watch, and I had engraved with my wife and my picture on it. And it came with kind of a shitty leather band. And so I have a friend, he makes shoes and does all kinds of stuff, but he did a thing a couple months ago where he went and bought a Louis Vuitton duffel bag for $2,000. Mm-hmm. And then he cut it up and he made a bunch of watch bands for people and sold them all over the place. And so he gave me one for that watch. So now I can wear that watch that's an engraved picture of me and my wife, but then it has a Louis Vuitton band on it.
That's kind of cool, yeah. I hope that was profitable for him, that he cut up a $2,000 bag to make a bunch of straps.
Yes, it was.
Good for him. Good for him.
It was. And he makes watch bands out of all kinds of stuff. He made one out of a baseball the other day, which is kind of cool. Yeah.
That's cool.
He does really cool stuff. So that's really cool, and I love your watch company, and orange is my favorite color, so that's really cool that you have your own orange.
That's my favorite color, too, so we're on track there.
Oh, kick-ass. Now, let's talk about when your non-compete ended, because it must have, and now let's talk about Bond Speed wheels.
Sure. Unfortunately, after I left, Boyd's had some difficulties. It was bittersweet because you want them to be successful, but you also kind of go, oh, yeah, I would have been there. But it went bankrupt. And that was after I left. It was about 18 months after I left. And so with their bankruptcy and closing down, my non-compete went away. So I was able to get back into the wheel industry, and I really didn't even intend to do it, but I had a company reach out to me and say, hey, Brad, now that they're gone, would you be interested in designing a wheel line for us? So I said, yeah, but I want to call it this, and, I'll retain all the rights to it. So we did a manufacturing and distribution deal, and I would have called it Bonneville, but there's a little company out of Michigan called Pontiac. They literally owned every trademark for every automobile part relatable to any car with Bonneville because of the Pontiac Bonneville. So we took the Bond from Bonneville and put Speed behind it, and that's where Bond Speed was born. And it just turned out that people absolutely loved the name. And so we designed the line. They started building them and took off right away. And we quickly started gobbling up some market share. And that's kind of where it started from. And then after about 2 terms of the licensing agreement, I was able to take it back. And it was really interesting because Boyd and I kind of rekindled. It was kind of like a bad divorce when we left, but we'd gotten back together, and it had been 10 years had passed. And him and I started having lunch again. We started talking. Well, he said to me one day, he goes, you know what? American Racing, I'm getting my license back on my wheels from American Racing. I said, that's so weird. I'm getting mine back from U.S. Wheel. And that's when we decided to get back in business together and start the wheel factory together. And then he had literally gathered all of his employees at the hot rod shop. And this would have been now what most people think of Hot Rods by Boyd, because it's the on TV Hot Rods by Boyd. Because I always say, when I owned the company, we weren't on TV. So a lot of people only know Boyd from when he was on TV. He gathered up everybody because you're going to see Brad around here a lot more. We're getting back in business together. Brad's going to be my partner. We're starting out with the wheels, and then he's going to get back involved with the hot rod shop again. And we had barely started running the wheel factory when Boyd got sick, got put in the hospital, and then shortly after that, he passed away. And, I had to regroup and move everything down to my place down here, and that's where we've been ever since. But that was kind of shocking, because we had gotten back together. We were, as my wife said, she goes, if you blinked and you didn't know 10 years had passed, it was almost like everything was just how it was back in the day, that the 10 years that you guys were kind of giving the stink eye to each other had never happened, and we were best buddies again,
I'm sorry that you lost a friend, but I do think it's extremely fortuitous that you guys were given the opportunity to bury the hatchet, and he was able to go out when y'all were on good terms, if that makes any sense. No, it does, and I was real happy for that too, because we were friends, we were business partners, and we would embark, whether it was a car or a promotion or whatever, and we would sit at a little restaurant by the shop, and we would just start throwing ideas against the wall, and they would become something huge. And you don't get that with every business partner, and it was fun. And so I was very happy that we were able to kind of bury the hatchet, become friends. And I just know what the industry missed and what the world missed by it not carrying on, because we had so many talks about what we wanted to do and where we wanted to go and take it to the next level, and it just never got to happen. It just wasn't meant to be. Well, I'm sorry. So Bond Speed right now, you have a very interesting partner, I think. Oh, that guy? Well, that goes clear back. I mean, we're threading this needle, and that goes clear back to Vision, because Scotty Ross, who was the tour manager for Poison, became a good friend of mine because he was a car guy, and we always kept in touch. So then fast forward to the Boyd years, Scotty called me one day and he goes, Brad, I want to bring a friend of mine by, and you're going to hit it off. I just know you guys are going to be friends.
because everything you are into, he's into, and you guys just have the same personality. And he brought Michael Anthony by from Van Halen. And this is when Van Halen was like just ripping it up there in their heyday. Michael came by, and Scotty was absolutely right. We became best buddies. We went on a fishing trip down to Cabo with Sammy Hagar and a bunch of other people, and we just hit it off.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors. Let's get back into it.
Years go by. We built cars for him at at Hot Rods by Boyd, wheels for his cars. And Mike and I, we got into fast boats. He got me into fast boats, and we'd go out to Havasu with our boats and our wives and our families, and we would hang out. Well, when I told him I was going to start this watch company, he was like, Brad, I want to be part of that. I said, no. I said, it's better to be friends than business partners in this case. And he brought it up a few more times. And finally, I said, okay. And it's worked out fantastic. And so he started out as my business partner on the watches. And then when I got into wheels and everything else we've gotten into over the years, he's been right there. And he's been a great partner, still a great friend. And it's a nice little thing for the company, because he has a lot of fans and a lot of friends and rock star buddies and stuff like that, it helps boost the brand's image.
Well, I didn't even know that he was part of the watch company as well. That's pretty dope. I want you to talk about real quick. I want you to tell everybody about Man Seeks Adventure.
Okay. Well, if I can digress just a little bit about how I got into podcasting, because it brings up another friend of mine who's no longer with us he was a really big inspiration. I want to bring it up. Pete Saporis, who owns SoCal Speed Shop. Pete's a buddy of mine, clear back to the Boyd days. We'd always been friends. And years ago, I did a syndicated radio show, and I asked Pete to be my co-host on it. Pete was 20 years older than me, but he was just a dynamite guy, a great friend, and smart. In fact, he introduced me to Billy Gibbons, and because he was buddies with him. And so Pete and I were doing really well with this syndicated show. We were in 50 markets, but that show came on 10:30 in the morning on Saturdays. So if you weren't by your radio in that market at 10:30 in the morning, you didn't hear the show. So Pete, one day I came in and I said, hey, Pete, we're going to let this all go and we're going to do a podcast. And he said, what? What's a podcast? And I said, well, Adam Carolla, who was a friend, had filled me all in and let me, bend the ears of all the guys that worked for him and everything and learn about podcasting. And I said, it's an up-and-coming thing. That's what we got to do. People can listen to it. Because our biggest complaint was that, oh, man, I listened to your show, but I had to take my kids to practice, or I had to, go to the drag race, and they would miss it. And too hard to record it off the radio. And, because before digital and before iPhones and all that. So we started the podcast. And we hadn't even done our first episode. And I called up Pete, and I said, Pete, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but we're going to add 2 other co-hosts. And he goes, oh, am I off? And I said, no, you're not off. I said, we're going to add 2 other co-hosts. I said, I just want to bring this thing around, and I want to bring in different voices. And that's when I had invited Matt on to be the new car guy, Aaron Hagar, who I knew through Sammy, Sammy Hagar's son. And Sammy and I had known each other when I met Aaron. And Aaron's a rat rod guy, but he's also not as versed. He hasn't been around it as long. So what I like about that is he asks some of the questions that some of us would be like, everybody knows that. No, they don't. And so he genuinely asked those questions. And that's how Shift and Stare was born. I put all these guys together, and we launched it at SEMA, and it just gelled. It worked. Everybody's personalities, and our very first, one of our very first shows at SEMA, we blew everybody away because nobody knew what a podcast was, first of all. I mean, there literally was no other podcast at SEMA the year we broke out. And people were like, so where do I hear this? Well, I listened on my computer. But we brought in like Billy Gibbons, Guy Fieri. I mean, all these great people that were car guys to our stand to do the podcast. And it really drew people over and really got them excited. And it helped launch it.
gear, racing, rides, people, and places. With your hosts, Brad Fanshaw, Matt D'Andria, and Aaron Hagar. New media for a new type of motorsport enthusiast.
That was my long way of answering your question. The next step was to keep growing my Bond Speed Media grouping of shows. So I had a friend, Dave Merrick. Dave Merrick is the head of global design for Honda and Acura. Dave is just an awesome guy. He's got a great personality. And we would sit around, we would talk, and we'd talk about design, and we'd talk about, hey, if you go here, you got to try this restaurant, or you got to go to this bar, or have you ever driven this car? And then, he would call me and go, hey, I'm going to Zurich. Where should I go, Brad? And I'd go, oh, when you're in Zurich, you got to check this place out. Well, we said kiddingly one day, I said, man, this would make a great podcast because we go so many places and get access to so many great things. And he goes, I'd do it. I said, well, let's do it. So Man Seeks Adventure was born, Cars, Bars, Eats, and Adventures. And it began as Dave and I doing the show about cool places to travel to, where to eat, where to drink, have a drink of the day for each episode, and then we would talk about cool cars and experiences, people we knew, and then we'd bring people on. And we've had everybody from the founder and curator of the Hard Rock to Adam Carolla to comedians, all kinds of great guests. And then about a year into it, we had a guest, and she was on a show called Garage Squad. She came on to promote it, and she happened to mention while she was on the show that she said, oh, guys, it's so cool you have a drink of the day because I'm a mixologist. And she goes, I own a mixology company. We host parties and come up with drink menus for places. And Dave and I kind of looked at each other and we went, hey, you want to join the show? Heather Storm joined the show, and she's been with us ever since, mixing a cocktail for every episode and bringing in the female perspective on dating and on travel and everything else. And Man Seeks Adventure has just been a blast to do.
This is Man Seeks Adventure, all about cars, bars, eats, and adventures, with your hosts, Brad Fanshaw, Dave Merrick, and Heather Storm. Learn how to drink like a man, dress like a man, eat like a man, drive like a man, act like a man. Every episode is adventures and misadventure.
One of the things I like about the show is that basically it tells you how to dress, drink, eat, and drive like a man.
There you go. See? Exactly.
I love that. I love it.
You can always tell when we recorded 3 episodes in a weekend because we're usually getting a little bit knockered towards the end, It's like, because she mixes her drinks heavy.
As well she should.
Yes.
Now, there was a couple of episodes that you and Dave did without her. I'm sure that happens a lot. She was probably off doing something. But this particular episode, you made a peanut butter infused Jack Daniels.
Oh, yes. Yes, I did.
Explain that, because when you were saying it, I was like, so did he put the peanut butter in the Jack Daniels bottle, or did he put the Jack Daniels in the peanut butter jar?
All right, I can tell you how to do it. So you take about 3/4 of a jar of peanut butter, and you get a mason jar. Now you're going to put all that peanut butter in the mason jar, because a mason jar screws shut really tight, right?
Yes.
Big mason jar, and then we took about 3/4 of a bottle of Jack Daniels. But the thing is, you don't shake it all up. You turn it over once, twice, maybe 3 times just to blend it. And then that's it. You leave it sit in the freezer. That's the key. You put it in the freezer, and then you come back 24 hours later and you put a cheesecloth or something to strain it, and you pour that into another, receptacle to hold the Jack Daniels, and your Jack Daniels will have an aftertaste of peanut butter. And it is so good. And then the secret here is my wife walked in and she goes, what are you going to do with all that peanut butter? And I said, well, what do you mean? I said, I'll use it on a sandwich or something because it's going to be infused with Jack Daniels. And she goes, why don't I make some peanut butter cookies? And that's where the Jack Daniel's peanut butter cookies were born. And they were spectacular. So nothing went unwasted there.
You know, as I was listening to, I've probably listened to, 50 of your episodes.
Good. We need all the listens we can get.
I have never wanted to be in the room more than that day. I was drooling thinking about it.
And do you know that on YouTube we have all the drinks we mix? There's a video how-to of how to mix our drinks.
I did not know. Tell everybody where that is on YouTube.
You just go to Man Seeks Adventure on YouTube, and you will see videos of mostly Heather, thankfully, making every drink that we talk about on the show. And then there's other adventures on there. Like we've gone, on adventures to restaurants or to nightclubs and things like that. It's really a lot of fun.
Oh, wait, didn't you go to like Sammy's birthday bash or something and post like a couple
We did.
Yeah, okay, there it is.
Yeah, last year.
Yeah, okay.
We also have a great video up there of, those escape rooms that they have?
Yes.
We were in Vegas last Halloween. They invited us to come do the escape room at one of the hotels. So we went and did that. And then we went bar hopping on Halloween night in Vegas. And it was a lot of fun.
Nice. Obviously I don't know all the drinks you've had on the show, but have you ever had a Halle Berry?
No, I have not had that.
I didn't think so. Okay, so I'm going to give you the recipe. I'm going to give it to you right now. And I'll text it to you later, but you guys got to have it.
Okay.
So you take 3 blackberries, half of a jalapeno, no seeds, no membrane, and you muddle all of that in the bottom of your glass. And then you take 2 parts gin and 1 part triple sec, and then you pour it in there and shake it over ice and all that other good stuff, and then that's your Halle Berry. It's sort of a smart ass because, Halle Berry's, she's super hot, and also, you got that blackberry in there.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a Halle Berry. So it's muddled blackberry and jalapenos, and then triple sec.
Yeah, text me that one. I'll try it.
Yeah,
we'll try it on the show.
Oh, cool.
Might be the Howlin' Berry by the end of our show. But,
Nice. All right, cool. Well, as we're heading out, can you tell everybody just real quick where they can find you on social media, and also hit the names of your 2 podcasts again for me, please?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram. That's where I post a lot of stuff at Bradley_Fanshaw. That's F like Frank, ANSHAW. And on Twitter and on Facebook, I'm just Brad Fanshaw. Then, of course, our shows, you can find Shift and Steer. And Shift and Steer, we have a website. So if you can't find it, just go to shiftandsteer.com. It'll have every episode there, but you can find us on iTunes and Man Seeks Adventure. And then there's also a great show for car guys called Mike Brewer's Behind the Wheel. Mike Brewer from Wheeler Dealers. Him and I did 15 episodes of a podcast that were just a bunch of fun, but his production schedule on Wheeler Dealers just didn't allow us to do any more. But if you're a fan of Wheeler Dealers, check that one out.
Kick ass. Thank you so much for that. Now, before I let you go, is there anything that we didn't talk about or I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about?
Gosh, the only thing we didn't talk about is my production company, where we get involved in doing a lot of television production and things like that, and my electric bike company. But that's I'll have to come back sometime.
How did you even have time to talk to me with all of these companies?
Well, I sold the electric bike company, so it's gone. It's down the road.
Well, let me ask you this. Is your wife afraid to go out with you anywhere because you see something, you like it, and then you start a company that does that?
No, it's my employees when I come back and I come in and I say, I've got an idea, and they all groan. They go, oh, God. But
Awesome. All right. Well, Brad Fanshaw, thank you so much for taking the time to let all of us get to know you a little bit better on Fascination Street. I really, really appreciate it, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate you calling me and having me on. It was a lot of fun. And, thanks to everybody out there who is listening, because we know better than anybody that without listeners, these podcasts don't do great. So, you know what? Go to iTunes and give Fascination Street a 5-star rating and a good comment.
Sweet. And likewise, do that with Shift and Steer and Man Seeks Adventure.
So appreciate that.
Now,
All right, man.
You take it easy. Have a great rest of your night. And when you call back Billy Gibbons, tell him to get back with me.
Okay, I will. I'll tell him to listen to your podcast.
There you go. Thanks, Brad. You have a good night.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This is an iTunes review for Fascination Street Podcast. This one is from W. Fincher. It says, "Ha ha ha ha! Exclamation point. So many great stories. You just gotta sit back and laugh. Thanks, W. Fincher." That was a 5-star iTunes review for Fascination Street Podcast. Rate and review Fascination Street Podcast on iTunes, and maybe next week I'll read your review. As always, thanks for listening, Streetwalkers. And don't forget, follow the show on Twitter at FascinationSTPD, on Instagram at Fascination Street Pod. Follow the podcast page on Facebook at Fascination Street Podcast. And of course, you can always email me at fascinationstreetpod@gmail.com. And if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and rate us on iTunes. For the next 3 months, everybody who rates and reviews the show and sends a screenshot to fascinationstreetpod@gmail.com will get a free surprise gift mailed to them. Every single one of you. So do it. Thanks, Streetwalkers. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence. Used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.